Welcome back to another DFS Army, Geeks Vegas Lines, daily fantasy football and betting angles podcast for week 5 of the 2019 fantasy football season, brought to you by OverlayDFS.com, a new Stardom Situm fantasy game with progressive jockpats. I'm your host, Kevin Allen, aka the Fantasy Football Geek, and I've got my man, the season-long specialist, Long Sez in the house. What's up, Sez?
Hey, how are you, my friend? Good to be back.
All right, good to have you. And once again, we've got John Alessia, a.k.a. Statsational, the sports betting goat. What's up, my man?
How's it going?
All right, I'm excited for week 5.
What an avalanche of positive feedback on Statsational last week. I mean, he stole the show, man. People loved having you on. We loved having you on. Thank you so much for coming back.
I appreciate it. It was probably the hair, which
I can't
pretty good. Yeah.
I can't speak to that. I have the reverse hairdo. See, the reverse hairdo.
I'm over here hiding it. So, I'm like, let me put my hat on. All right. That might be it. But yeah, John is one of our betting gurus over at the DFS Army Beat the Bookie site, and, many, many years of sports betting experience, tools, amazing stuff. So we're super excited to have you on. And we're excited for another week of fantasy football action. How'd everybody do last week? You crushed your season-long games, Sez?
This was overall, it was a pretty bad week in fantasy. The scores were lower. I think the hit lines were, the cash lines were lower too, I'm sure, in DFS, unless you had that super perfect lineup. But no, as usual, it was carnage and tragedy for me.
It's funny, in DFS Army, because of the way we have our optimizer tool set up, if you just allowed it to game stack that Rams game against the Bucks, which was super low owned, and all you had to do was accept it. It wanted it. All you had to do was allow it. You made money. John, did you stack Jameis Winston at the Rams?
I did. I had some Winston stacks, more with Evans than Godwin, but I did have some Godwins as well. Where I did well was in the afternoon slate, because that's where I really hammered that game. So that worked out well, and I was pretty high on Fournette, believe it or not, which wound up working out well. McCaffrey was my biggest was actually my biggest running back of the day, my biggest player of the day, actually.
Wow. My biggest player. It's funny. I had my core plays of Eckler and Gallman. They were in every lineup pretty much I made. So I love it when the running back position goes well, because then it just then all that really matters is the stacks you set up. Like if you could nail your running backs, and then you game stack pretty much the rest of your lineup, you're going to do well. So I had a lot of Fournette as well. Came onto him late as I was kind of studying his usage, and just it was one of those things where, and I have another name like that this week that we're going to take a look at, but where the guy was just, he hadn't scored a touchdown. Okay.
Well, now if he can only get in the end zone, right? That's what everybody's talking about.
That's how it changes. And I've got another name like that for this week that I'm going to mention as we go through this.
Well, we're going to go through the slate, and I think the first game we're going to talk about, which is Arizona at Cincinnati at -3.5, is one of the most interesting, because this game, I wouldn't be surprised if it goes under 36 points or over 58 points. There is so much variance in this game because there's two bad teams, basically, with offenses that could explode but haven't yet. John, is there any money on this game, or are people smart enough to stay away from this one with a lot of volatility? I mean, how is Cincinnati more than a field goal favorite?
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. Obviously, the market is so sour on Kyle Murray right now. The money is going on Arizona, believe it or not. So we've got some money coming in on Arizona, and the over is where the big money is coming in. So we've got 77% of the money on the over, and only 34% of the tickets. So despite how poorly Cincinnati looked, and I mean, it looked like I was out on the offensive line there last week against Pittsburgh. As poorly as they played offensively, the money's pouring in on the over. So they don't think particularly high, as I don't think any of us do, of this Arizona defense. And the market's expecting points here, 47.5, and that's one of the higher totals of the day for the main slate.
Do you agree that this could, you wouldn't be surprised that this game is very volatile? It could be like a low scoring, just horrific offensive game where it could just go crazy. Do you think it could be one?
Yeah, well, I think you're getting that feel because you have two bad teams, right? So you just never know which side of the ball. You have no confidence in either side of the ball on either team, I think, at this point. And that's why you have that feeling. You're like, well, maybe both offenses are just terrible and we get 36 points, or both defenses are just terrible, and we see this game in the 60s. So it's probably a game as far as DFS goes, it's probably a game you're going to want to have if you're putting in 150 lineups. You're going to want to have some exposure to this because of that reason, because you might get an absolute offensive explosion and a low-owned opportunity. A lot of these guys might be low-owned. What you're going to be, I believe Kirk is out, right? On this
Kirk
one?
is gone.
Kirk's out.
Kirk is out. Ross is out.
And Ross is out.
Time.
Yeah, so you're going to have some low salary guys in this game, and possibly this could be a big spot for DJ Johnson. You saw the guys on Monday night for Pittsburgh do really well, the running backs.
So we're talking about David Johnson, correct?
David Johnson. Did I say DJ?
Yeah. I just want to make sure. Okay.
Yeah, David Johnson. So yeah, just looking at what happened on Monday night, it's a possibility that he could be getting some of those receptions.
Geek, when you go through the players in this game and who is going to be fantasy viable, I'm curious. Do we even know if Kyler Murray is going to be a good NFL player? Wouldn't it be funny if the Arizona Cardinals again had to take a quarterback in the top 3 picks? No, would they do that? They would never do that, right?
No. This is a few years with Kyler, and I like what Kyler Murray has done. Like, let's not give the kid a hard time. He's young. Everybody's expecting a fantasy points explosion. I'm old enough to remember when Lamar Jackson couldn't complete a pass in the NFL. It wasn't that long ago. So let's not go crazy. But more importantly, for DFS angles here, exactly what you just said. Christian Kirk is out. John Ross III is out. So what happens there? This is a week where you're going to want to pay up at running back. There are studs galore at the high end of the salary range. So the only way that's happening is if we can squeeze in some value at the wide receiver position super cheap. Now you start to talk about Auden Tate. You start to talk about Keyshawn Johnson. Some of these guys that are going to be involved in this smash game. And I call it a smash game for good reason, not just because John Statsational's power ranking sheet seems to indicate a smash game coming, but also because I've been targeting anybody who plays against either one of these defenses all year, and now we have the golden unicorn situation of the 2 teams with the worst defenses in the league that give up the most fantasy points facing each other, and that can result in a thing of beauty. So Arizona plays super fast. There's just a lot of plays. The other team gets the ball a lot more often. They get to run some extra plays. Plays equal fantasy points. And both of these teams actually have had pretty decent offensive performances outside of last week for both of them.
Staying with Arizona for a minute here, they already said Andy Isabella is going to get his shot this week. He's going to be playing an outside receiver. I mean, a lot of people coming in for some reason are like, oh, he's going to be a good slot receiver, and we all it's the crazy thing. He's a speedster. He's an outside receiver that can get past the defense. Is this the week? I mean, it's been a good year for rookie receivers. Is this the week that we see an Andy Isabella monster right off the bat?
I'm not calling him a monster, man. He's a rookie. He's coming in his first game. Let's see what happens. But I like the running game for the Arizona side. Maybe a smidge. They refuse to run it, like John said. Talking about DJ, they refuse to run the football, or else I would love him even more because again, I've just been playing any running back against Cincinnati all season, and it's working, right? So you just want to load up on whoever the hell is the running back going against them. The thing about it is, Arizona's not necessarily going to commit to the run, even against a worst in the league type of run defense. But I do think David Johnson sets up for the best game here. He's a little pricey. But he does set up for a good game here.
Yeah, and then on the other side of the ball, what Cincinnati players? I mean, John Ross is out, like you said. Is this a situation where we're going to dust off? You know me, I like the real trashy plays. I like the ones that you're just turning over the rocks. I mean, is Auden Tate in play here, or are there any of the receivers, or is just Tyler Boyd and the usual chalk? Talk to me about the Cincinnati side.
Again, we need to afford our stud running backs. Auden Tate had 10 targets in week 3. He had 6 targets in week 4. Hell yeah. At 3,500, I'm dusting off some Auden Tate with no John Ross in there to eat those looks. And Tyler Boyd is going to get all of the attention on defense. So it makes me like Auden Tate even more. And weirdly, we have to talk about Tyler Eifert as well, because the whole narrative of the season has been Arizona can't cover the tight end position. And as much as I hate Tyler Eifert as a player, because he's always hurt, and
guy catches touchdowns.
He's not going to get volume, but if you want to pay $3K on DraftKings and just punt the position, I think that'll be a popular punt. I don't love it, but some people are going to be forced to use that because, again, you want Christian McCaffrey, you like Zeke, you like all of these juicy, tasty, yummy running back names. You're going to have to just basically give up, at least in cash games, on the tight end. You're going to have to punt the tight end position. And there aren't, all the normal punts are kind of priced up. Even Austin Hooper is $4,500 at this point. So you want to pay down, you're going to have to suck it up with Eifert.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to that game for two bad teams. Moving on, Tampa Bay with that awesome victory knocked me out of Survivor last week. I took the Rams last week in Survivor. I was a donkey and pivoted off of the Chargers. But Tampa Bay is going to go visit New Orleans. They're a field goal and they get the hook. Favorite New Orleans is. Tampa Bay, this feels like a mispriced too. I'm on Tampa Bay in this game, John. Where are the sharp bettors putting their money? They got to be feeling Tampa Bay is a good team.
Yeah, you're going to be with the sharp guys and probably a decent amount of the public. It's about 2/3 of the money's coming in right now on Tampa Bay. I think the interesting thing here is the money coming in on the under, which is a little surprising. About 80% of the money on the under. This is a 47 total. And it's one of the higher totals. Again, we don't have Kansas City playing on the main slate. So for DFS purposes, we don't have that big 50-plus game. No team total is over 30 this week. So it's going to be really interesting. This could be one of the games, at the 47 total. Who knows? This could be the stack again. Maybe Tampa, again, once again becomes the stack. If you look, the total's gone over now in 14 of Tampa Bay's last 19 games they've played on the road. And the total... Again, at 47, New Orleans defenses look really solid. They look strong. Obviously, they played really well last week at home. But the market right now seems to think the under. So if you're in agreement with that, and let me just make one note on my rankings that are out on the Beat the Bookie website. I've got this as my highest total game from the projections, both from a yardage standpoint and from a point. So you're going to have to make your own mind there, but I think everyone's going to be spread out in DFS purposes on where they're taking their stacks. This is another one where it could be the game that has the best stack options.
Yeah, what's interesting about this game, and I'm just curious to John, like when you do your algorithm, your number, how much do you respect what the market says? I know, I'm sure you're familiar with Rufus Peabody, who posts their algorithm on their website. What he always talks about is that he does his algorithm and then he regresses it about 55% back to the market. Do you do a regression back to the market, or do you totally stay with your numbers and your algorithm when determining which side to be on?
You're talking about as far as the betting goes, as far
Correct.
as my model on the betting. No, I don't look at the market at all. So
Okay.
this is all strictly based on my information, but a lot of what I'm doing is trend based. So a lot of there's kind of two different ways to go about it. You could be looking at trend based models, or you could be doing your own sort of projections and then putting your own line on the game. So in other words, you may have this game as Tampa should be getting 1.5, in which case you would really love Tampa. And that's something similar to what you're talking about, what he would be looking at. I've got a bulk of trends that I'm looking at, and if we can move the trends greater, if the trends are greater on one side than the other, that's where the model is going to go. So it's a little bit different take, but there's a couple of different ways you could go about it.
That's interesting. I like that, and I always like all the different models and how people come up with their numbers. Geek, this one a couple weeks ago would have seemed like a carnival game too for DFS. After New Orleans stinker last week as far as offensive production, I'm not so sure. But Tampa Bay, man, they look like they're ready to roll and go on a little run right here. What do you think?
Listen, the Saints defense is always a little bit underestimated, and we just saw them completely stifle the Cowboys. I mean, completely stifle them. So I understand where the public is coming from in the betting the under, and for me, I do think that's a massive risk here. So in this game, even though when you click on Jameis Winston, it shows opponent rank 32nd, meaning the Saints are allowing a lot of points to opposing quarterbacks and wide receivers this year. A lot of the reason for that, it has a lot to do with you can't run on this Saints team. Now, that doesn't harm the Bucs since they don't run the football or don't even bother trying anyway, so it's not a big deal for them. But to me, this is a GPP game, right? This is the kind of game where I want to load up on it, especially on the Bucs side. I'm not super excited about a lot of the players on the Saints side, outside of maybe Alvin Kamara. Like, it's hard to really get excited about Michael Thomas with Teddy Bridgewater throwing to him. He's not terrible, and his salary has come down on the DFS sites to the point where it's a tenable play. But for me, this game is definitely more of a place where I'm going to be looking to get game stacks and team stacks rather than sort of find a lot of one-off pieces that I want to kind of mix into other tournaments. So, like, I can't really see getting too excited about rolling out Mike Evans without Jameis Winston or without, some players from the Saints in the same lineup. I don't really see wanting to do that. What I do like is stacking up this game, Rams Bucks style from last week, and hoping that it goes crazy. Now, the one place where I'm not sure I can go is really getting excited about Teddy Bridgewater and using him as a quarterback this week. I guess you kind of have to, but he has not shown that he's really that he's got like a big fantasy score in him. He's coming off a 7-point performance. He's got a 16-pointer, even in a game where they won 33-27. So I don't know how you feel about Teddy Bridgewater, John. Like, I get this game is stackable, but I mean, with Teddy.
Well, Geek, when you look at Drew Brees, how usable has Drew Brees really been, other than the name Drew Brees, right? So they were moving away from really a pass-heavy offense the last couple of years anyway, and I think with Bridgewater, that's just been accelerated. So, I don't think Bridgewater is he's probably not the guy who's going to light it up. It's just going to be a matter of, does he dink and dunk enough, and maybe pick up. The only way it happens is if he picks up 3 touchdowns to Kamara on screens, something like that.
That's what I'm thinking. Like, the only place I'm using him is with Kamara, hoping that he's getting points with those screens.
Yeah,
right.
The difference between the run heavy approach with the Saints with Teddy versus Drew Brees is Drew Brees was still efficient. He was still actually a good quarterback. Teddy Bridgewater, he looks like he's not even feeling the rush when it comes in. He doesn't realize, he doesn't have that internal clock. I've seen that a little bit with Deshaun Watson lately too. We'll get to that. But Drew Brees is, the ultimate technician. He knows exactly when to step up in the rush. And I think that's the difference. And I don't think it's a question of whether you're going to use Teddy Bridgewater's. How does this affect the ancillary players? And it's I mean, Alvin Kamara had a great week last week, but I'm nervous every week starting him. Moving on, actually, before we move on, we're going to talk. You talked a little bit about our new sponsor, Overlay DFS. I'm going to do their read, but then I want to come back and talk about it because it is a really interesting new way to play DFS. Tired of having to pick the perfect player at every position in order to win your salary cap DFS? Tired of having your salary cap league out of the running right in the first 5 minutes? Does playing salary cap DFS feel like a job and not a game? Want a fantasy game where the pros with 150 lineups and computer algorithms can't dominate? OverlayDFS.com has a new revolutionary start-sit game for fantasy sports. They are the home of single-entry GPP. Here's how you play. You're going to make 12 start-sit decisions from a choice of 30 matchups that they present to you. A win, a loss, or a tie will be awarded to the overall record for each decision you make. Records in the top 10% of users will win 9 times their buy-in. You can have a 12-0 record, and that will guarantee you what they call a progressive bonus. All matchups are player versus player who will have more fantasy points. So if you get about 8-4, that's a good enough to cash usually. Some weeks it'll be 7-5, and other weeks 9-3, depending on the week. Make 12 picks in the matchup options listed. For example, last week they pitted Lamar Jackson versus Dak, James White versus Sony Michel, and many other matchups. The object is to stay consistent and finish in the top 10% of the field to win 9 times your buy-in. And if the stars align, go 12-0. Right now, if you go the perfect 12-0 in their $109 entry game, you're going to win $26,000. Geek, John, I played this last week. It's cool. Now, I know you guys are professionals and you have your algorithms, but this is a great entry way into DFS or something for the pros to try where you're making start-sit decisions, and those decisions basically give you a win-loss record. I played it. I loved it. I was rooting one player against the other. Have you checked it out yet?
I have not checked it out, but I mean, the concept sounds really cool, and I don't know what I would do if I can't use my algorithms in my 150 lineups. It does sound like it's meant to keep people away from someone like me.
Yeah, see, this is perfect, and this is the proof. So if you're listening to this and you're just getting beat up in DFS, which I don't think you should stop playing, but this is a great way especially if you're a season long player or a DFS that's someone that's still learning how to play, you go in there and you make your start sit decisions. And I'm telling you, this game is fantastic. I played it the other day. I had a lot of fun rooting it on. It was great.
Let me tell you, if I know John, his mind is already working on
Well,
a method to beat this game.
I already have some ideas about it, and we can go over that later. But I will say this: it's really good for the casual player who is a season long player, especially. There's a lot of really sharp guys out there who don't necessarily who have a hard time competing on the big DFS GPP. You know, you're not the chances of pulling down these huge GPPs playing, you know, one or two lineups is slim. But this is really a contest where if you watch football, you understand the players, you understand the game, you could really do well. And as you said, there's much less of an advantage to these guys throwing in their algorithms and 150 lineups into these games.
Yeah, go visit our friends at overlaydfs.com. Give it a shot. The game is awesome. You're going to love it. They have entries at all levels. I think there's like $2.50 entries, and there's also entries for as much as $109. Check them out, overlaydfs.com. All right, moving on to our next game. Chicago at Oakland. Oakland's getting 4.5, but wait, the game's not in Oakland. It's in London. What I'm saying to you, John, is first I want to hear about the betting angles, but I hate the London game. I wish they would do away with it. If they're trying to expand the NFL game, why are they sending these crappy teams over there? Send the Patriots versus the Chiefs over there.
Well, I guess the theory is that over there they don't really care who's coming over, right? So they're just excited to get a game. When I worked on Wall Street, we had an office over in London. They were always super excited to go to those games. It was always a hot ticket. So for us, yeah, we didn't, especially when the game was at like 10 o'clock in the morning or 9 o'clock in the morning, whatever it was. At least now it's a 1 o'clock game. So it's a little bit better, and we don't have to watch this, what potentially is going to be a pretty boring game here. The line's actually up to 5.5 from the last I saw it. The total is 40.5. And the money is coming in heavily on the under, as you might expect, with these two teams. The Bears have actually gone under now 8 of their last 9 games. And
yeah, I fixed it. It's 5.5 now. There you go.
Is it 5? Yeah. So I'm pretty sure it's 5.5. And sometimes the one thing you wouldn't want to check out is the weather in London. Obviously, we know sometimes it gets a little wet, and sometimes the field there is not the best. So if it's wet and the field's not, we could really see a sloppy game over there. So I'm going to keep an eye on the weather in London and see if I can get any reports on what the field looks like. But it's also, I believe, the lowest total on the day. So obviously less DFS interest on these low total games outside of the fact that you're probably going to get a lot of Bears defense. Yeah. But 70%, I believe 70% of the money is coming in on the Bears. It's pretty much what you'd expect here. I can't imagine a lot of people like Oakland, but I'm curious, Geek, what'd you think about the difference in the offense with Trubisky out?
That's the whole thing. Trubisky's pretty bad, but Chase Daniel, I think it was Chase Daniel who came in.
Yeah.
Yes.
Not better. So Chase Daniel's not good either. This is a tough one because I really wanted to. Daniel played fine. Let's.
It was nice to see a straight pass thrown to Allen Robinson that didn't wiggle.
Yes, he played fine, and he's been around for a little bit, right? So it was fine, but sometimes you see these guys come in and they relieve the starter, and they come in and they look gangbusters, and then they come back in with the pressure of a full week of sort of, you're going to be the guy this week, right? And they don't look the same. So there's a lot of mystery there. I first looked at this game and I was kind of like, man, I kind of want to like Allen Robinson because he's really cheap, and he did all right with Daniel. I just don't think Mitch Trubisky is good. So well, let me ask you this: is this one of those guys where when Trubisky comes out, did that affect the line of this game at all? I think that's the interesting component for me.
Trubisky's actually one of the obviously one of the lower, how do you even word it? But when he comes out of the game, his backup is not as bad. So it doesn't move the line nearly as much as some of these other quarterbacks. So I think we're only looking at a couple of point move. Now we saw Chase Daniel last year, if you recall. Trubisky was out, I want to say 2 games. I know one game he lost the game. I believe it was to the Giants. He made a pretty good comeback in the game, but he didn't particularly look good. So, and I agree with what you were saying, where sometimes you see the backup quarterback come in on an injury and they perform really well. I think part of that also has to do with the fact that the defense isn't really prepared for that different quarterback. And so if you see quarterbacks, especially if they have a slightly different style, they're not as prepared. So you give them an extra week. Usually they don't play as well. And we've had not a ton of data on Daniels, but we've seen enough to know he's not a great quarterback. So I don't know. I think that's why you're getting a lot of under. Certainly the Bears defense has just looked unbelievable. And that's really how the Bears are going to stay in every single game they play this year.
Hey, John, Coach Valdez is calling you out, saying, boring? You really think so?
That's true. No, okay.
From Max. So
okay.
I have to, you know what? I like that these boring games, it's like in mixed martial arts, like the boring cards end up always being the most exciting. Does this change? I mean, I thought the same thing you did, John, at first. I was like, oh, boring game. But does this have a chance to be an under the radar exciting game?
Well, exciting. Yeah. When I say boring, my mind is total. My mind's thinking DFS, and it's like, okay, I'm never going to turn this game on looking for someone, needing someone to score here to push one of my DFS lineups. Right, but he's 100% right, and Mac is just a special player, and obviously he's going to have a little bit of incentive coming into this game. Did you see the play Dalvin Cook trying to block? I don't know if it was Mac who it was last week, trying to block one of the Bears on a blitz,
and he got mauled.
It was unbelievable. He was sort of flat-footed. He saw him coming and got absolutely run over. It was unbelievable. The Bears defense is remarkable. They're better than the Patriots, even though I've got the Patriots in my rankings slightly ahead of them. But I think when the year's over, we'll see the Bears number one.
This Bears defense has the ability to go down as one of the best defenses we've seen in a long time. And that's when you talk about boring, I get it. But we're talking about, listen, we're looking for daily fantasy points from our players. Here, I get watching the game and enjoying a defensive smashing, but what we're looking for is fantasy points. And the reality is, I don't see a whole lot of it coming on the Raider side. Like, I want to like Darren Waller because he gets thrown to a lot, but do I really want a guy on a team who could kind of get shut out here? Like, even if he gets a bunch of passes, where else are we going? We're going with the running back? Hell no. So Josh Jacobs? Hell no. Are we going with Tyrell the Gazelle here? Hell no. So the only real place that any sort of interest can come from, and this is my special of the week, my man Montgomery, the running back for the
Chicago Bears,
for the Chicago Bears, David Montgomery. Do you know that his primary competition, Mike Davis, was a healthy scratch last week? In essence, the coaching staff was telling us, this is our dude. Okay? This is our guy. Now, Montgomery has not put it together. And I got to say, it's a little disappointing in a smash game.
He's looked good, man. He's actually looked good.
This is like the situation we saw with Leonard Fournette before this past week. You're like, the motherfucker, he got 21 carries. He got 6 receptions. Last week, David Montgomery got 21 carries and 5 targets, 3 receptions. Did he do a lot with it? No. But, hey, he was facing Minnesota, a tough defense. But it seemed like finally the team was willing to commit to him. So David Montgomery stacked with Chicago's defense. If we need to find some fantasy goodness in this game, that's where I'm going with it. I'm like, listen, David Montgomery, I'm not ready for him in my cash lineup yet. I'm not. But 21 carries, 5 targets, Mike Davis, healthy scratch. That is the coaching staff telling us this is our guy. Now, if you're the coaching staff for the Bears and you have Chase Daniels as your starter, are you making a pass-heavy game plan here? Or are you like, yeah, let's fucking air it out with Chase Daniels this week? That's going to work. No. You're like, hey, we'll play some defense. We'll run it with Montgomery. And we'll come out of London with a win. We'll drink some warm beer. We'll go see Big Ben, and then we'll go home.
All right,
what I'm thinking.
Yeah, no, that's good. All right, then we're gonna make up some ground right here. The next 2 or 3, we're gonna do a little bit lightning roundish on it, and then we'll slow it down again, just to make sure that we're staying in our time constraints. It's a tough one to do that on because I love this game. Baltimore is going to Pitt. Pitt is getting 3.5 at home. This definitely seems like a mistake line. I think that recency bias is kicked in. But what's interesting enough is these teams kind of are equal. That's why I thought that when I did my own line for this one, John, I had Pitt at like -1 and it's plus 3.5. I don't know why these teams aren't considered equals, especially in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, it looks like the betting market agrees with you. The ticket money is kind of split, but the tickets are split, but the money's actually hitting the Steelers at 7-3. So they're about 70% of the money is going on the Steelers right now. Interesting. You've got 73% of the money going on the over, or I'm sorry, 42% of the money is going on the over, and 58% on the under, while 73% of the tickets are over. So we're seeing more tickets on the over and more money on the under. So it's possible here we're seeing sharp money coming in on the under. So that's something to keep in mind as well on this game.
Oh yeah, that's I'm definitely going to be interested in watching this game, and Pittsburgh, who was 0-3, I mean, now they have a chance to be right back in the mix for first place in that division. This is going to be an unbelievable fight to the finish. Now, from a fantasy perspective in DFS, Geek, what are we doing now? Is there a split backfield situation in Pittsburgh? Which one of the running backs is the chalk play going to be Jalen Samuels? I mean, or is he still a little bit under the radar? I like him a lot.
Why do we want running backs against Baltimore? I mean, that's not a team where I'm excited to target running backs against. As a matter of fact, Baltimore has been horrific against the wide receiver position or pass catchers, and they've been excellent against running backs. So I don't give a shit about Jalen. Hey, it's not a split. It's Connor's backfield. What happened last week was, again, Cincinnati is so fucking bad that you start to see the backup running back come in and do a little bit of scoring, and everybody, whenever you have such a terrible run defense, what ends up happening is the backup running back get a shot because just a couple of carries and he could score for you. So Jalen Samuels, yes, he had some nice work, and I do think they're trying to get him more and more involved in the passing side. 8 targets last week, can't go away from that, but I think a lot of that was they were just smashing the Bengals. In this case, I'm not a target running backs against Baltimore guy anyway. So I don't like any of these guys in this spot. And on the Baltimore side, I'm really not in love with targeting running backs against, I mean, the Steelers can be run on, but like Ingram needs to just fall into the end zone twice to really score enough. So I like the Baltimore offense here. I'll go back to Hollywood Brown. I love Mark Andrews. I think Mark Andrews might be the best play of the group, mainly because he's so consistent with his targets compared to other tight ends just in general. So, I mean, 8 targets last week, 7 targets before 9. He's so consistent with that 8 or 9 targets every single week, and they're high-value targets a lot of the time where they're throwing to him deep, they're throwing to him in the end zone. So that's the guy I'm looking at. I think, Lamar Jackson's going to be interesting here, but I'm not super high on the Pittsburgh side. As much as you kind of think, or the idea here is maybe it's a close game, they have a shot to win. The Mason Rudolph Steelers have not been a fantasy bonanza for me. So I'm not going to get too excited about them outside of, taking a few shots with the passing game and maybe going back to Juju Smith-Schuster or Deontay in some tournament lineups. Deontay
Johnson was a rookie that both you and I were we didn't love him coming in, but we liked the fact that Pittsburgh drafted him because they have a pretty damn good track record of drafting wide receivers. And sometimes when that second wide receiver who's been practicing with the second team all summer long, and then that QB, which was Mason Rudolph, starts, they have a better connection. And we've seen that so far. Deontay Johnson scoring in back-to-back weeks. Juju Smith-Schuster mostly being shut out from the fantasy perspective. Can we go back to Deontay Johnson?
You can go to Johnson, and you can go back to Juju Smith-Schuster. Listen, Johnson, you got to understand, 6 targets the last 2 weeks. If he's priced right, and again, this Ravens defense, and again, this is all a lot of this you'll see right in on Beat the Bookie. If you click on John's power rankings, this stands out. You're like, wow, this Baltimore team really allows a lot of passing yards. Now, part of that could be because they got smoked by the Chiefs that one game, and that's skewing the odds a little bit. But their secondary has been disarray, assuming Jimmy Smith is still out, which I don't know for sure. Do we know what the deal is with Jimmy Smith?
By the way, here's a comment going back to something you said before. Chubb and Casey ran well against Baltimore. I mean, those two teams are special offensive teams, but you're just saying in general, you like the Baltimore run defense as being a stout defense. And
yeah, it's not the kind of defense. I get it. I get that some players have gone off against them, but I think that's going to be the exception, not the rule.
Okay,
Baltimore
yeah.
is a good defensive team, and it's not where I
tend
want to
to
go
agree with
like
that.
with my cash games. Yeah, you play a guy like Chubb, and he went crazy that week, and it
but
happens, but you don't want to be doing that every week.
Yeah. All right. No, that's a good. I think that's a good roundabout way. And there's a couple of the ancillary players I like. Also, is I think Miles Boykin, the other rookie on Baltimore. You don't play him in DFS more than a dart throw, but I thought he looked pretty good in the last couple of weeks. John, is New England? I mean, can I just make a living just betting New England every week, and then as long as I mean, I know eventually I'm going to lose, but aren't I going to win about 58% of the time against the spread?
I off the top of my head, I think it's pretty close to that. And the Tom Brady does cover close to 60% of the time. Did lose last week though. He was a 7-point favorite, and they won by 6. But this week the game opened up at 13. It's already up to 15.5, and you'll never see more money on one side of a game as you will on this. Nobody's going to bet Washington. It's 90+% of the money is coming in on New England. What's the most interesting is where do you think the money's coming in on the total?
I mean, it's you would think, well, just based on what you said, it's going to be under, but yeah, just based on the way I would have guessed exactly what Geek just said, the over.
No, as you think about it, New England's defense has been
has been stout, and after Washington couldn't move the ball against the Giants, which everyone was anticipating they'd be able to at least. That was going to be a big DFS game. A lot of people were looking at. Richardson was going to be a big play. Well, 99% of the money right now is coming in on the under. Nobody has bet this game to the over. If you've looked in the
who's starting
New England's last?
Who's going to be the QB?
It looks like it's going to be Haskins. It's possible it's going to be McCoy.
Yeah, that's what I thought. It could be Colt McCoy.
It could be McCoy. So we'll wait and see. I don't know how much that's going to change anything. McCoy, right now the way Haskins looked, he's probably the worst option of the 3 quarterbacks they have. New England's gone under 4 of their last 5 games. So, and that's really a testament to the defense and the fact that their offense is just kind of doing enough right now. And letting the defense win the games. This might be the best defense Belichick's had in a long, long time.
Which is amazing to me that all of a sudden, like, the best team gets the best defense now. I mean,
well, yeah, it's helpful when you look at these teams. When Brady doesn't take the salary that a lot of these other quarterbacks, once you start paying the quarterbacks, like once Dallas pays Dak Prescott and they pay these, it's real hard to win. You're seeing it with, Russell Wilson and these guys, because now you can't pay the other players and the quarterback's always going to be the most expensive guy. Once these quarterbacks get the salaries, you start fading these teams. But the fact that Tom Brady makes money from all different avenues, and he's got a wife who probably makes more money than he does.
I've heard that before about Giselle. I don't think that's it. You know what? And I don't think that there is a reason. And it's a big mystery. It's a big enigma why Brady takes less, because is it really about just the winning? I don't know. I'd love to hear after he retires why he took such under market deals. Geek, you sold me a lemon in our dynasty league with Sony Michel. I'm every day, every night I lay awake thinking, why did I buy Sony Michel? Which running back? This does seem like a game where New England can get up early and then run the ball. Is this the week where it pays off my Sony Michel shares?
No more. Enough is enough with Sony Michel. You can't predict what these Patriots are going to do with these freaking running backs. Sony Michel, even when he gets an opportunity, he's just not doing. Yes, does it look like a Sony Michel week? Absolutely. Should he smash this week? Absolutely. Is he going to do it? I don't fucking know, because just when you think it's going to happen, Rex Burkhead comes in there and gets a whole bunch of carries, or they do something else. So yes, again, on paper, this is as good of a spot, but we've seen Sony Michel in this spot multiple weeks in a row, and he's failed. And the problem with Michel is they never throw to him, so there's literally no floor backup.
Okay,
stop
right there. How many targets does Sony Michel? Don't look it up. How many targets does Sony Michel have this season?
I looked it up, so I'll let John answer that. If John's paying attention, right?
How many targets does Sony Michel have?
Yeah, just take a guess.
Oh God! So in 4 games, he should be getting 4 to 5. So he should be in the high teens.
Kevin, tell him how many he has.
He's got 1 target this year.
Oh my God!
And that was a penalty, so he has 0 targets.
He didn't catch it, so he's got 0.
He has 0 targets because the one time they threw to him, there was an offensive holding call and it got called back.
There you go. So here's the problem with that. There's no floor here. So if you're talking about DraftKings, for example, if I'm getting a 0, I need an extra touchdown. I need a 2 touchdown performance. Now I don't have the numbers in front of me, but if I pull up the Sony Michel scores 2 touchdowns prop on DraftKings right now. Right? And that exists on DraftKings. It's probably something in the range of plus 600 or plus 550. Some level, maybe it's more than that, but that's given me like a 15% chance of that happening. Now, if I'm using a player, even like I need a better than 15% chance that he's going to make value. Okay? I need him to catch 6 passes. I don't need a touchdown. 60 yards. I'm starting with 12, and then let's see what he could do in the running game. So a guy like this is just DraftKings disaster. He's kind of, I mean, I hate to say it, but that's what you get from a little bit from Marlon Mack and Derrick Henry as well. These guys that aren't used in that way, they don't help you. The Patriots, the only thing I'm interested in here,
I was going to say, for a team that's favored by 15.5 points, are there any players you can use in fantasy? This is the most unusual thing I've ever heard of.
It's borderline no. Okay, you want to use you want to use Dorsett.
Tony Dorsett. Oh my God!
I wish Tony Dorsett was on this fucking team. You want to use Philip Dorsett? Okay. You want to use Josh Gordon? All right. But none of these guys look great. So no, the only fantasy asset that I really see in this game that you can count on in cash is Patriots defense. That's it. Everything else scares the shit out of me. You don't know where they're going with the football.
I've never seen anything like this. A 15.5 point favorite. You can't use anyone with confidence in DFS. Washington side. Chris Thompson, I know it's a tough matchup against the defense, but Chris Thompson seems to have a safe floor in PPR. Scary Terry might be back this week. He is back this week. He's practicing. Is there anyone you could use? I mean, again, looks like a complete stay away game. I can't think of one player that I could use it with confidence.
None of it. Stay away. All right. Move on.
All right, then we will do just that. Next game of the week, John, Jacksonville, off that, what I thought was the game of the week last week against Denver, goes into Carolina. Carolina, given the extra hook on the 3.5, Carolina feels like the better team here. Kyle Allen didn't have a great week last week. Where's the money going? What do you like in this game? Do you think Jacksonville's a good team?
I do think they're a good team. They're certainly not in the upper echelon. I think there's a team that potentially can make the playoffs. We had Jacksonville last week, actually, over at Beat the Book. That was one of our better plays at the didn't look good early, but they certainly came on strong at the end in Denver. And that game was bet down to 2.5. So the sharp money was coming in on Jacksonville late on that. But this game opened at 3, went right up to 3.5. The total was 42, went down to 41 almost immediately. And we're seeing Jacksonville's taking about 70% of the money, while the tickets are about 50-50 on that. And the under is getting hit for 79%. Again, low total in this game, 41. This is like going back to the old NFL. We're getting these totals in the close to 30. We don't see low 40 totals anymore, but we got a couple of them this week. So another one of those games where we're not expecting a lot of offense.
Yeah, Hunter Sinclair just commented in that Carolina defense has been sneaky great this year. I agree with that. Go ahead, John.
I'm sorry. If you look at the rankings, I believe top of my head, they're on my power rank. I think they're like the 6th best defense right now.
Yeah,
on the rankings.
They were our recommended season-long pickup of the year for those that streaming defense. That's a great strategy that we all recommend. Geek, on from the DFS side, I mean, is this? We talked about this a couple weeks ago. That one year that Le'Veon Bell and David Johnson were just auto starts. Does Christian McCaffrey, has he reached this status yet?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at how much he is, yes, doesn't matter who the opponent is. Listen, if you look at the actual usage that this guy is getting, it's borderline unprecedented, okay? And I'm just going to point to this past week. Tough matchup, Houston. Maybe we should stay away? No, because they gave him the football 27 times for carries and another 10 times for targets. So you're talking about a guy who got 37 touches last week in a tough matchup. So, yes, Christian McCaffrey, if you're going to give him 37 touches, if you're going to give him 30 touches the week before, if he's going to have if he's going to have 30 touches on week 1, he had the down week in week 2 because it was a 4-day, it was a Thursday, and I just think they didn't want to overwork the guy. But if they're going to give this guy this amount of opportunity, he's going to go bananas every single week. LaDainian Tomlinson style from back in the day, when that was just like a cheat code every single week. So, yeah, you got to play Christian McCaffrey. And I'm going to tell you something. This isn't a good matchup. No, Jacksonville run defense is pretty good, but it doesn't matter. Christian McCaffrey every single week, is a stud. On the flip side of this game,
Wait, don't go to the flip side just yet. I want to know about the Carolina receivers.
the Carolina receivers.
Oh,
Listen,
yeah, you were talking about Carolina, right? So
well, yeah, on that side, they can move the football. I still like Curtis Samuel. I don't love this quarterback to get the football to these guys, but I mean Curtis Samuel continues to get a bunch of targets every single week. He had 7 targets last week, 7 targets the week before, so he's 4,500 on DraftKings. So you got to like the cheapness of that. You're getting 7 targets for cheap. DJ Moore, a little bit priced up there, getting fewer targets, a little scarier. So
yeah, he's going to drop in the pricing soon, I'm assuming.
Something's off about that. And then you have, of course, Greg Olsen. But my thing is, I don't like this game from the Jacksonville side for a stacking purposes. Like, I can't see really wanting to use Kyle Allen. I'll ask you this, John, that too, but I can't see really wanting to use Kyle Allen this week in stacks against the Jaguars. Well,
the Jaguars are a different team when Jalen Ramsey's out, and there's no indication he's going to play. I mean, this is just a different defense.
Yeah, I mean, give me your take, John.
I
think up Kyle Allen is where I'm going.
I'll probably have a very small amount of that. Yes.
All right.
Just because I play 150 lineups. If I was doing a single entry into a GPP, no, Kyle Allen probably wouldn't be the way I was looking. But I'm going to have a pretty small percentage of. I might have 2 or 3 stacks with him in it, just to have a little bit of exposure.
See, the side for me that I like a little bit more is the Jacksonville side. You have this really, really good pass defense for Carolina, and you don't necessarily want to attack that in any sort of a cash game, but they have been vulnerable to to slot receivers. So D.D. Westbrook stands out a little bit as a decent play out of the slot. He'll avoid Bradbury outside coverage that I think DJ Moore. Where am I? Not DJ Moore. That DJ Shark. DJ Moore and DJ Shark. You want me to get that straight? We'll see on the outside.
A DJ stack.
DJs, yeah. That DJ Shark we'll see on the outside. So if I had to play it, D.D. Westbrook, and I feel like it's a thing I want to do every week where I just want a little bit of Broadway Gardner Minshew.
Yeah, he's
every week, just a little exposure.
Mustache mania. That's a really interesting take. I like that game. I live in Jacksonville now, so Mustache Mania is crazy on here. Just a quick, before we move on, a quick word from our friends at Fantasy Draft. Fantasy Draft is the only rake-free daily fantasy site in the biz. They have partnered with Hooters to bring you the largest guaranteed rake-free contest lineup in the history of daily fantasy sports, including the $1 million Hooters kickoff. Only on Fantasy Draft are 100% of the entry fees paid to the contestant winners. Sign up at FantasyDraft.com today with promo code ARMY, that's ARMY, and you'll get a 7-day free trial membership. Must be 18 or older and prohibited in certain states. Check your listings for that. Fantasy Draft has just been awesome with the rake free. In the next 20 to 30 seconds, just tell our very educated subscriber base why rake free is important.
Guys, this is, I can't push this enough. We talk about this every single week. The sites charge 10 to 15% of your entry fees in rake. So every time you enter a contest, it doesn't feel like it. I'll give it to you in stock market terms, and I know John's going to perk up from this. When you buy a mutual fund and it's loaded and you buy it and it doesn't feel, I'm not charging anything, but they charge you 5% upfront. This is what's going on every time you enter a daily fantasy sports contest, not on Fantasy Draft. Okay, Fantasy Draft has said, you know what, fuck it, we'll do it different here. We're going to charge you a subscription. It's very, very low, and we'll run these contests. We'll be the operator, and we're going to eliminate the rake. The rake is the thing that makes it hard to gamble, okay? Because most of us can achieve a 50, 55% win rate, 52%. Most of us can be just a little bit above average. It's hard to be a lot above average because your competition is really trying hard too. But if you can play rake free, you've got a much better chance to stay in the game for a longer period of time. I want to support this idea. I want to make sure everybody goes over to Fantasy Draft. Use our code, support this pod. You don't even have to. We want to just support this site and this idea of rake-free. I think it's great for the ecosystem. I think the other sites will have to somewhat follow suit, hopefully reducing rakes, making the game better for everybody. So across the board, we love all of the DFS operators, but I love this rake-free contest. Please go play on FantasyDraft.com. And if you want to support this podcast, you can use promo code ARMY when you sign up, and you'll get that free week of the subscription.
Okay, so when they go to these new DFS sites, one of the games that I think they should be most interested in is Atlanta and Houston. John, talk a little bit about what's going on with Deshaun Watson and all these sacks he's been taking. It's been destroying them. I know they have a bad offensive line, but we've talked about this on this podcast that there's been a lot of research done that sacks are more of a QB stat than they are an offensive line fault. So is Deshaun Watson just look like a little bit of a different player this year? He's still super talented, but where are the bettors off of Houston now, especially with this number?
The market is actually on, let me just take a look here. Yeah, the money's coming in on Atlanta 60-40. It's not a huge, not a huge difference. The tickets are pretty split 50-50. Where this is the highest total on the day, I believe, for the main slate, 48.5. And the money's coming in on the over right now, 79% of the over, while the tickets are split 50-50. So we're probably seeing some sharp money coming in on the over. They think this game goes higher here than the 48.5. I've actually, it's funny, brought the Deshaun Watson up. I wanted to go back, and watch that game. I'm going to do that probably later on tonight, and get a better idea what exactly is going on there. When he's a fairly inaccurate quarterback, and I think his big advantage was he could run. He's hugely athletic, big arm, and he's got a great wide receiver that he could throw the ball downfield to who makes plays. But if he's not getting the time, and if he's getting beat up, which he is getting beat up in every game that I've seen, it makes it a lot more difficult to run. And I think, just in general, I think we spoke about this a little bit last week with Cam. You want to start looking at these quarterbacks who are extremely athletic. They run the ball really well. Their fantasy edge a lot of time is in how much yardage they get on the ground, not just what they do passing. And when they're inaccurate, eventually the running stops, but the inaccuracy never gets any better. And these guys start to look worse and worse. Possibly we're seeing a decline a little early in Watson. Now, he's not getting any help. Right. So if he got some blocking, I think he'd be fine, especially with Hopkins. But the couple of games that I've watched, he's had absolutely no time to throw the ball, and he's getting destroyed, like hurt pretty badly, hit pretty badly.
And again, like I said before, there's a lot of research showing that QB sacks are more of the fault of the QB than they are a poor offensive line, especially at the NFL level. Geek, I went in my season-long leagues. I thought I was being smart by waiting to taking Watson in the 5th, 6th round. He had one good week, a couple mediocre weeks. He's probably still expensive in DFS. Start by talking about the passing game, the lack of passing game with the running backs. They spent the 3rd round draft pick to get Duke Johnson. Why is none of this working out so far?
It's really tough to say why these guys haven't been able to put it all together. But at the same time, it's also tough to think that everybody expected this massive change in who Deshaun Watson was last season to this year, as if something massive had changed about him. We saw Deshaun Watson in his first season have a couple of crazy, awesome games, right? And everybody got really high on him. He was Pat Mahomes before Pat Mahomes was Pat Mahomes. Then he gets hurt, comes back the next year, kind of has a down year last year, right? He didn't have a lot of incredible fantasy performances. He's had a couple of good games this year, and it's been very much matchup based for him. But I disagree that it's the offensive line that's the issue with Deshaun Watson. I mean, I watch something else. I watch a guy who holds the football longer than most quarterbacks do. It's one of his superpowers in a way. He's willing to take the hit. So he'll wait that extra half a second to a second for his guy to come open to throw it, and he's willing to take the hit. Now, the problem is that leads to sacks also because he's waiting and waiting and waiting, and maybe he doesn't anticipate as well as some other quarterbacks do. There was another guy who was very much known to wait for that last second to throw the football, and that's Tony Romo. It eventually led to his career ending because he got smashed so often that he just couldn't last a very long time playing with that style. But Deshaun Watson is pretty young, so I think he'll be fine for now. He does need to long-term kind of maybe adjust that approach, but I don't think that the issue with him is his offensive line is terrible at all. If you watch his style, he just waits a little bit longer to throw the football. He'll take the hit, and the way he throws it under pressure is fantastic in a sense. He doesn't show fear and get jittery when he's about to get smashed. He really, again, he reminds me of Tony Romo in that way. I know it's a weird comparison, but that's who he reminds me of a little bit, and that's fine. what he's got to do is throw it more to DeAndre Hopkins. Like, complete the fucking pass, throw it to DeAndre. The dude is so good. All you have to do is throw to him, and he'll catch it. And, maybe try to get a half second quicker on that release. But he's had 2 big games this season so far. He's had 2 really shitty games. The shitty games have come in spots where we expected them to be shitty. Yeah, again, Jacksonville.
Yeah, but he's supposed to be one of these QBs that transcends that. I mean,
He's not. And he's not getting rushing yards. So, this idea of him rushing for a whole lot, it's not happening. And he's not transcending the matchup. But what do we know this week? This is a good matchup, right? You've got Atlanta coming to town. They usually score a lot. They usually allow a lot of scoring, usually. So if all goes as planned, this is a very interesting spot. I love this game for game stacks this week. I want to try it with both sides. I'm not just on the Deshaun Watson side. I'm very much on the Matt Ryan side as well.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about a couple of the passing game on Atlanta. Specifically, Calvin Ridley's been bad. Mohamed Sanu's been good, not great. But, my mistake in DFS was I always go for the home run at every position. What I realize now, and not just cash games, it's okay to have a middling wide receiver 3 and then try to hit, just to bake in that safe floor. Mohamed Sanu has just been giving you double-digit fantasy PPR points. In DraftKings in a PPR format, is he a playable guy this week?
Absolutely. Especially, again, in game stacks with Ryan, with Deshaun Watson, like built around this game. But he's kind of playable as a standalone piece. I don't love his upside. So
right. The upside's not there except if he scores. I mean, Julio obviously is an every week upside play, a pay up guy. I love Julio Jones for fantasy because you just never know when that 40-point explosion is coming.
Yeah, it totally happens with him. And it's not like this Houston defense has been great against the pass to start the season. I'm just going to check the model here, but I'm checking John's model here. But, if you look at it, let's see where we have the passing games in this one.
Yeah, Houston, I think I had it at, it was pretty low, like 200, but Atlanta close to 300 yards.
Close to 300 yards. It's funny, the model likes Houston's running game, but they don't have running backs on that team, in case you're familiar. So I don't know who the fuck is getting 152 yards.
Who's getting? Is it Deshaun Watson with the rushing yards?
Well, that's what it is. It's going to be accommodated. We talked about it last week. They were slated to get a decent amount. Probably, I think it was close to 150 yards again last week. We had it, but it's one of those situations where you'll see if you actually look at if you look at the model, some of the teams with the highest rushing potential yardage are teams where the quarterback's actually getting a lot of those yards. Buffalo,
I see it on Baltimore every time on the
you've got to kind of use your own. That's giving you a total number, but then that doesn't mean just go and hammer the running back. And I think the running backs for Houston are not helping Deshaun Watson here. They don't have very good backs.
No, yeah, Carlos Hyde and Duke Johnson.
I think Houston dropped the ball
with Drake.
Just in general, just like what they've done at the running back position for the last few years. Like,
I thought they should have I thought they should have traded for Drake before the season.
If John,
was he available?
Well, yeah, of course. Anyone
he's available right now. Yeah.
Anything that's not nailed down to the floor is available in Miami, and there's nothing nailed down to the floor. I just don't see any players besides some core trench pieces that they would keep, and even Learnby Tunsil was sent out the door. John, in our preseason podcast, we had Drake as one of our top 12 running backs as far as skill set and just efficiency. It's just that he wasn't getting the usage. So we're in agreement with you. It's just that he couldn't be in a worse situation. And what John just alluded to, going to Houston, oh my God, I mean, he would be a top 12 running back in fantasy for sure. So yeah, no, you guys covered that game. I also like Ito Smith a little bit because, again, not Devonta Freeman's there, but Ito's been coming on. A little bit more for a pickup in season long. In DFS, it's a tough place, but
not my kind of play.
I understand,
I need guys who can get me
guaranteed opportunity.
We've spoken about this. Where I take the Flyers, it tends to be more the wide receiver position than the running back position, because that sometimes from a wide receiver, it doesn't have to be designed. The game plan doesn't have to be designed for that receiver to have a big catch and go off, where the running back, generally, they had to go into that game knowing they were going to give the back the ball a certain amount of time. So I tend to go with the more chalky running backs, and I'll take chances at wide receiver.
Yeah, that makes a lot.
I just want to add one thing in here. It's worth noting that Devonta Freeman, who we all hate him. We agree on that. had 9 targets, 8 receptions last week. So it's not like this guy, he got a little bit of work. Like they're starting to get him a little bit of work on this team. So
well, how about Hooper? How about Hooper?
Yeah, Hooper
Oh
was
my
ridiculous.
God, how do we
Yeah.
not? Dude, Austin Hooper is the steal of fantasy drafts this year.
That was so I'm in a yardage only league that's been going on since the early 90s. I just joined with my aunt's husband. I know it's terrible, but it's a big money
league.
It's a big money league, and it's very wacky, and it's roto, and that's crazy. The categories are the positions. So I had to like kind of go, look into this, and yeah, I took Hooper it was an auction. I got Hooper for hardly anything, and now I'm sitting at the top of I think I'm 4th in tight end yardage right now. So
wow,
there's a lot of good options at tight end. I don't want to get into the whole strategies, but between tight end and quarterback, you don't have to pay up in season longs.
Yeah, they often get forgotten about, and that's great. And it's really smart that John brought up Hooper. It's just that he has been the George Kittle of this year's tight end class, meaning someone who's showed flashes in the first couple of years and then just is busting out. I love that. That's a great. I love Austin Hooper. Thanks for bringing that one up. Minnesota's going to the Giants. All of a sudden, the Giants have a pulse, John.
They do.
Yeah. I mean, people were actively betting against the Giants. And now, and I won't say Daniel Jones's nickname because I get the douche chills every time someone says Danny Dimes. I just don't like the name.
I was all about the Danny Dimes early, like during the preseason. And now it's too much. It's almost as bad as Booger. If you watch the Monday night game, calling Dalton the red rifle on every play. You can't call a guy the red rifle who has 100 yards after 3 quarters and is 13 of 23 passing, and he's got 3 points up on the board. Like, all right, one time is enough. I don't need, when he's throwing 400 yards, call him the red rifle all day.
We'll call him the red pop gun.
Oh my God, that Booger kills me. But
the red switchblade.
Right. But in this game, it's 5.5 right now. Minnesota hasn't moved. The totals where the move was opened up at 46, down to 44. And 91% of the money's coming in on the under, and actually 70% of the money on the game, both tickets and money, are coming in on Minnesota. So while it looked like the Giants were becoming the darling of the league, and Minnesota, pretty disappointing performance last week. But again, we talked about how good that Chicago defense is. The market seems to like this game to go Minnesota and the under. And if you look at the last few games, the trends here for Minnesota, I believe they are they're 5-5 on the under in the last 5 road games. They're 5 in a row on the under. They've gone under in 5 of their last 6 games in total, and the Giants have gone under in 15 of their last 22 games at home. So the trends are kind of pointing towards the under. The market believes that as well.
Geek, are we set up for another Wayne Gallman mega throbber? It was just on this podcast last week that we were talking about Wayne Gallman. You asked me about him. I said he's competent. You know what? I can't even take credit because I got it wrong. He's a stud. No, he's not. But is he playable again this week for fantasy against a stout Minnesota defense? Geek?
Here was the sharp thing that you said last week, and that stuck with me as later on in the week I went from I really like this guy to he's locked into all of my lineups guy. And that was that he was a pass catcher. Like when he had played, he'd caught a lot of passes. And that's the shit I'm looking for in a backup running back. And look at what happened last week. They wound up, aside from 18 carries, 63 yards. Okay, great. And he even plunged one in for a touchdown. But 6 receptions, 7 targets, 55 yards, and a touchdown in the receiving game. That's what I like. Now, I want my running backs to get pass catches, right? So I like Wayne Gallman. This is not a good matchup. We're talking about a Minnesota defense that is very good. They're great at home. They're fine on the road. This is not a great Giants offensive team. So let's temper our expectations here a little bit. But it doesn't mean that we have to now not use Wayne Gallman. The more exciting running back option in this game is certainly Dalvin Cook. He's a stud. Giants can't stop shit. But the other angle in this game is going to be checking out the tight end for the Giants, Evan Ingram. Tight ends have pretty much smoked the Vikings all season long. We saw Darren Waller get like 15 receptions against this team and some crazy amount of yards. There have been a lot of great tight end performances against this Minnesota defense, and I think it's because of their quality cornerback play. It just funnels passes to the inside to the tight end position. And the other side of it is looking at how bad the Giants' pass defense is. And saying to ourselves, and I know it's scary and I know it feels gross, is this finally the game where Kirk Cousins doesn't completely suck?
No.
And Thielen and Diggs, you're already decided.
Well, I know.
Thielen and Diggs could finally have a decent game. I think it's no. I think it's probably a Dalvin Cook game. But
yeah, well, you know what it is? I mean, and Adam Thielen kind of said it in a pretty professional way in a post game interview. He's like, if we want to start winning games, we need to throw the football. And if you think back to last year when Adam Thielen was getting 100 yards and a touchdown in the first 8 games, things were going well. I think that Kirk Cousins' confidence is just shot right now by the way they're playing football with this 1970s style, which you can win that way in the NFL, but you need like a mobile quarterback and you need an elite offensive line. It just hasn't gone well. John, you're an observer of football, man. What the heck do they need to do? I mean, is Kirk Cousins just a below average quarterback making this crazy amount of money?
Oh, he's definitely a below average quarterback. I mean, he's probably an average quarterback. Let's put it.
So you would say he's like quarterback like 17?
Yeah, he's in that range. He's in that range. Top of my head, if I just without thinking of every single quarterback, certainly with the amount of quarterbacks that are down right now, you might be a little higher. But yeah, I think he's good enough for them to win. Certainly with that defense, I do think they need to open it up a little bit. They've got a pretty conservative coach. It's a possibility. He did apologize, I believe, to Thielen, from what I heard earlier today, that he apologized that he's not getting the ball enough. So I don't know if that's going to trigger them throwing the ball a little bit more. But this is a game where, it's possible that they're, again, I mean, the game script, I could see the game script going, 2 different ways. They could either pound the ball with Cook, and if it's working, they're just going to keep riding Cook, or they decide, you know what, we've got 2 pretty good wide receivers here, and we got to get them the ball, and we'll mix Cook in as well. So I don't know. I mean, when you look at my numbers, it's not terrible. I think I've got both teams throwing the ball for about 250 yards in that game. So I mean, it's a game I think you're going to want to have some exposure to as far as DFS goes.
Yeah, so Geek,
but not like going crazy in your cash game.
No, not cash game, except for Cook. I think Cook's the guy.
Cook is one of those studs that we're like,
right. You're going to want to plug him in.
There's a lot of good ones.
Yeah, last week against the Bears, I don't think you want to play too many guys against the Bears this year, but against the Giants, Cook he's going to be one of the better plays this week.
Geek, your New York Jets. Who knows? This is not going to be a Darnold game yet, right? I mean, he's not back yet, so they're going to go.
There is a slight possibility he is practicing.
He is practicing, yeah.
Okay, so I mean, if he could stop, who knows what sort of European women came through came into that port, New York, to give him mono, but
no, it's not Europeans, man. He just went out to Jersey Shore at Belmar one night. He was invited by some friends. He came home. All we know about is the mono. Right. There could be other things.
You know what?
That we don't know about.
Maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's mono is just the cover. I mean, they wouldn't, if it was something like really embarrassing, they wouldn't tell us. Like,
you don't stop playing for herpes. Like, you just play through.
Yeah, you never know.
The mono keeps you out for a few weeks.
Yeah. So the New York Jets are going to go visit Philly. Philly's a 2-touchdown favorite. The Jets just don't look like they have much going on here. I know it's a big number, John, but I'm pretty comfortable putting a few bucks on Philly this week.
You'd be going against where most of the money's coming in right now, but not a huge percentage. It's 60% of the money's coming in on the Jets right now. The game actually moved from 14 down to 13.5. Ticket percentage is about the same. It's about 60-40 in that direction. But the total's gone up from 43.5 up to 44, and we've seen, again, about 60% of the money coming in on the over there. So the game, it's kind of, it looks a little lukewarm right now. No one, this could flip. Money could start coming in on Philly late if the line comes down a little bit more. But doesn't appear like the market at 2 touchdowns, like anyone really has a strong feel on this game.
Yeah, what I'm seeing here, like the game spread just slightly came in a little bit from the open at 14-13. So
yeah,
and maybe the game total just down a little bit. So the big thing for me, and again, this goes back to all of our sort of data on offenses and defenses, is you can't run on the Eagles. And the Jets' best weapon is Le'Veon Bell, especially with the quarterback situation in turmoil. So you can't run on this Eagles team. We saw it with Aaron Jones when everybody got excited after Jamal Williams came out of the game. We're like, oh shit, it's an Aaron Jones smash moment here. He's going to get all the run. Nope, because it's the Eagles, and you can't. It's very difficult to run on this team. On the flip side, you can throw on them, but the Jets without an actual quarterback, I think they're going to have a hard time taking advantage of that. Completely, if it's lane whatever, they're not going to take advantage. If Sam Darnold is back, by the way, this is a very important note about this game. If Sam Darnold actually is back, this wasn't an injury, guys. This was just a disease.
Well, you have to remember also it enlarges your spleen, and I'm not joking. I'll let you speak to it, John, but you can't really. If your spleen gets hit, man, this is like death. This is not injury. This is death.
Well, they're not letting him back. They're not letting him back.
No, he's back at practice, but he's not. He hasn't been cleared to go into any contact yet. So more than likely he's not going to be the quarterback this weekend. The market is not figuring him to be the quarterback. Falk is the quarterback listed. And that's more than likely what we're going to see is Falk. We won't see Darnold for probably another week. Yeah. So
then they're on bye. So it's week 6 is when they come back.
No, they just had the bye.
They had the bye.
Oh, they just had
the bye.
Listen, here's the deal. Luke Falk is Luke Falk is a fucking disaster. Okay, you don't want anything to do with anything about this Jets offense if Luke Falk is at the helm. So what do we want? Number one, the Eagles' passing game, because the Jets can't stop shit in the secondary. The Jets' defense is actually not bad against the run, even with no quarterback at the helm, and even with just a massive challenge. They do have a lot of great run stoppers. They have great safety play. They could stop the run, and this Eagles team is very difficult. Like a guy like Howard is not really generally going to do well against the Jets. You need more of a shifty guy.
Oh, wait a second. If they get up big, can't Howard be that clock grinder?
He can, but that is a different story. That's when the defense is taken out, and now you're in full quit mode. You're down massive, and now Jordan comes in, and they don't care, and they just let it. But as long as they're playing still and actually giving a shit, like a guy like Jordan Howard is not going to do well against the Jets team. But the thing, a shiftier guy like Miles Sanders will do better in this spot. But the real story here is Eagles defense, Eagles passing game. They should get off to a really quick lead. As far as the Eagles defense, I love here. So if we need to get off the Patriots, who are very, very expensive, this is the way to go. You want to get down. It's not that much cheaper, but it's cheaper on all of the sites to go Eagles defense here, and they are going to absolutely smash the Jets at home, or at least on paper it looks like they should. Eagles wide receivers should do well here. Somebody asked about Aguilar. Hell no. Whenever Aguilar, the only time I'm interested in Aguilar is if Jeffrey and Jackson and Ertz and Goddard and pretty much everyone else is hurt. Generally, I don't like Aguilar as a player at all. But Alshon Jeffrey could be interesting here. If Deshaun Jackson comes back, it could be interesting. Ertz and even Goddard are interesting. But the most interesting of them all is probably Carson Wentz, because he'll figure out who he's throwing to. It's very difficult to nail down this Eagles passing game, but Wentz should get the points. And as long as the Jets run defense can hold up just a little bit here, they'll force Wentz to throw for touchdowns, and that will benefit Wentz.
John, what does your model say the line should be for Buffalo at Tennessee? Because I really like Buffalo to win this game, and I was just thinking about to get a little extra juice on that. I'm just going to take the Buffalo money line this week.
Yeah, I actually have Buffalo should be a 1-point favorite. So
okay.
and you're getting points there. So I don't mind the play there on the money line. The under in this game, or the under in Buffalo's games, have come in 8 of the last 9 games on the road and 6 of their last 7 games in total. And that's just a testament really to how well their defense is playing. And you saw it last week where the defense really kept them in that game against New England. So going to kind of take a look at where the money's coming in right now. On this one, we've got, if I could find it. Yeah, do we know who the quarterback's going to be yet? I don't think we do
no, but you know what? Even if it's question. Right. I think we don't know yet. Today's Thursday. We'll know tomorrow.
Yeah.
I think a better clear. But let's assume it's Barkley just for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
I think Barkley is a perfectly capable backup coming in for 1 or 2 games to hold it down. He's obviously a very different player than our guy Josh Allen with his hair on fire style of running. But I don't think, as far as a production standpoint, that Matt Barkley is that much of a downgrade in this specific matchup. How are you seeing that?
Yeah, I've got to see where the line, because I think it's off in some spots, but we'll see if the line moves. It's probably going to be about a 3 or 4 point swing, is from what I'm guessing off the top of my head.
Oh, you think it's that much?
I think
Okay.
it's at least 3. Yeah, I think it's at least 3 on this game.
All right,
but it looks like the market likes this game to go under. So that's sort of where the money's coming in right now. Yeah, it's tough. It's a tough spot because it is a different team with Allen at the quarterback position.
I mean, just again, he is so tough to bring down. He's one of the most exciting football players to watch, I think, in the game. Geek, when you talk about the running game specifically, we were not on Derrick Henry. You know, we claim a lot of victory laps on the show, even though it's tacky to do. But one of the guys that we avoided at all costs was Derrick Henry. We got back on him a little bit when we interviewed Derrick Henry's high school coach, Bobby Ramsey. But Derrick Henry is currently a top 9 running back in PPR, where he doesn't even catch passes. Derrick Henry, you just put him in there, he's probably still underpriced, I'm assuming.
No, I mean, listen, we're not going to just plug and play this guy. And a big reason why he's top 9 in PPR is because the running back position has sucked this year. It's just bad. So, you know, Derrick Henry's been fairly consistent. He's got a couple good games, but he has the same issue going on with him that we see with Sony Michel or some of these other guys, which is they don't throw to him. So, you know, on DraftKings in particular, it's very, very difficult for a player like Derrick Henry to make value. And I'll give you an example. I mean, he ran for 100 yards, 27 touches last week, you know, even got a reception in there, and he put up 14.8 points. It's not enough. It's not enough. He needed a couple touchdowns. He had a game where, I mean, he's had a touchdown 3 out of the 4 weeks this season, and you do see that in his touchdown prop. But, you know, he's always like a little bit higher to score a touchdown than most of the other running backs. Not all, but most of them. So he'll be like 60% or 62%, where the other guys will be like 55% or something like that. But in general, you know, is he playable? Sure. Is he playable at home in this spot? Yes. But do we want to trust him in like a cash lineup or anything where we need floor? Absolutely not. It's too scary. Now, I do have a take on this game beside from that. Assuming that Matt Barkley does play, which we're assuming, his style of play will not favor a player like John Brown. He's not a deep ball thrower, right? But who will he favor? I'll give you a hint and see if you could figure it out. Long red hair.
Yeah.
Pasty complexion.
Sounds
old tattered wizard's robes. Must be a Beasley.
He has red hair?
Fucking Weasley from Harry Potter, man. Damn.
Oh, okay.
We don't want. You guys have neither one of you have seen Harry Potter.
No. I knew you were. I have not, and but I just figured you were referring to Beasley. But
you're killing me.
Yeah. I mean,
it was Snape making fun of Ron Weasley.
I'm very bad at all that stuff. I've never seen any of those movies. So.
Yeah, I'm with you, John. We don't watch that nonsense there.
Well, the people at home are familiar with that.
You want to talk?
Listen, I'm busy trying to get value to the subs on the NFL, so I'm watching a lot of NFL.
Right. All right, so you're not watching Harry Potter movies in your spare time, is what you're saying?
Yeah, I have no spare time. This is what I do.
Well, there it is. Well,
hey, pretty good answer.
That's what we've got. But no, in all seriousness, Cole Beasley's interesting here. I mean, I don't normally like players at Tennessee. That's a place where fantasy points scores go to die. It's just not a place of fantasy scoring. But Beasley is the interesting one with Matt Barkley. He had a pretty good week last week with 13 targets and 10 targets the week before. So he seems to be emerging as a possession guy. The Bills don't really have a tight end that they target. They really don't have a third wide receiver that they target. And right now they don't really have a running back that they target. So if they want to move the ball a few yards up the field, it's got to go to Beasley. I've got more for this game, though. On the other side, we saw A.J. Brown explode last week, and this is going to be a word of caution. We saw A.J. Brown explode last week, 3 receptions, 2 touchdowns, 24 fantasy points, and a whole lot of, who's this guy, going around the industry. Word of caution. That was only 3 targets and 3 receptions for A.J. Brown. Let's not go crazy for A.J. Brown this week. I get that he had a good game.
Well,
But this is the
he's had a couple good games already.
He did, but on low volume, he is an explosive player. I will give him that. He was a first round draft pick this year that no one remembered for some reason.
Well, he was in the second round. He was picked, and it was too late. He was actually our number one rated rookie receiver before the draft process. Once the landing spots occurred, we pushed him down considerably because we didn't like. There was too many targets there. We didn't love Mariota going into the season. But yeah, AJ Brown should have been a first round pick probably. And again, as far as fantasy, we pushed him down after the landing spot. He was teammates with DK Metcalf, and I thought he was the better receiver in college than DK Metcalf.
I definitely think this guy's better, but no one wants to play a wide receiver that's tied to Mariota, and I get that. And I don't like this game like I said, I don't like this game from fantasy scoring perspective. Tennessee games are just always shit, and Buffalo games are always shit. You got two shit teams together, and you got a fucking shit sandwich. It's the last thing you want outside of maybe taking some shots in tournaments, for contrarian purposes, or taking a shot on Cole Beasley just from a volume and probably going to get a bunch of targets. And, must be a Beasley kind of thing.
As we're going through this, though, I'm seeing how many of these games have we said are two good defenses. So for DFS purposes, we may see the defenses kind of get spread out. There's a lot of options. So you might not have a really high-owned defense this week. And also, even offensively, there's no great stacks. Like I said, you don't have the Kansas City on the main slate. You don't have some of these big offensive games. So I think we're going to see fairly low ownership across the board. It's going to be split. Like a lot of these ownership's going to be split. So it's an opportunity to maybe look and really study hard and try to find some sneaky plays this week.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's a tough week for Survivor with all the with the big chalk teams already being off the board for a lot of people, and a lot of the other spreads being 5 points or less. The last two games, we're going to bang through these in the next 9 minutes, guys. We're going to do it. Denver going to LA Chargers. Chargers giving just under a touchdown back, 6.5 point spread. Denver, heartbreaking loss last week. How do you see this game, John? What's your take on the Chargers? Melvin Gordon possibly coming back. Eckler. What will be that whole dynamic, and where's the money going?
So it's the money's pretty split. It's actually a little bit in favor of Denver right now, 60%. The total is 44.5, and it's 50-50 split there. I think they got this game right. I've got the game myself at 7, so I think they've priced the game right. I don't have a strong opinion one way or another on this game. We've seen a lot of unders between these two teams in the recent past. I believe they've gone 5 of 5 under Denver at the Chargers. So something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, no, it's the Chargers. They're an interesting team this week from DFS perspective. Certainly season long. The most questions that I'm getting in the Slack chat rooms, Kevin, is from what should I do with Austin Eckler? My advice has been don't worry about it. Maybe he's not right now. He's currently sitting at RB2. Nobody saw that coming, but I still see him as a top 18 back, even with Gordon there.
I mean, for DFS purposes, hell no. So, we can't be playing guys at 6,700 on DraftKings and similar on FanDuel when we don't have the slightest clue of what kind of workload they're going to have this week. You need to have a locked-in massive workload to support that kind of price point.
Well, let me stop you for a half a second there, because I want to ask you about Eckler. So Eckler, if you just took it, I don't remember who said, I saw this going around Twitter today, that if you just took his passing numbers, cut out all the rushing numbers, just throw them out the door, he would be wide receiver 11 right now. So I think he's insulated a little bit with the pass catching. Because even if
Gordon catches passes too, this is not the case.
But you're talking about wide receiver 11 and then add in some rushes. Is that he's not going away?
He's not going to get all the passes. Listen, we talked about this many times. This Chargers offense produces points to the running back position via the pass. And if you go back to Gordon and you look at his all of his years in this Chargers offense, it's always been via the pass. If you look before Gordon showed up, they had Danny Woodhead. He would come in kind of in that Eckler role and put up points via the pass as well. So I like Eckler. If he's on my season-long team, I'm playing him this week. Okay. Yeah, but I'm not paying $6,700. I need a $4,500 price tag on a player like this on DraftKings in order to play him, because he's going to get 6 or 7 receptions, 7 or 8 carries, not this week, maybe next week, the week after. We don't know how much action Gordon is going to get this week. It's been a week. We don't know. We don't know how much action Eckler is going to get versus Gordon. It could be a sneaky GPP play to roll Eckler out and be like, oh, they're still going to wait another week. Maybe Gordon's not fully in there, and Eckler will get 60, 70% of the touches, and he could do his thing. But there's a lot of really good plays just above him in salary that don't have that mystery.
Yeah, another one that we avoided at the price in fantasy drafts this year and season long was Keenan Allen. We were obviously wrong on that. Is Keenan Allen in PPR DFS? Is that just like that's the type of guy you pay up for every week?
Yeah. You wanna. He's the guy you want to pay up for every week, especially in a competitive game, especially in a game like this where there's, the lines are fairly close. It looks like it's going to be a close game, like we saw in Miami last week. They kind of went away from the pass. Keenan Allen didn't have a bad game. He was 5 of 6, and they called back a long touchdown, due to a holding or some other penalty last week. But Keenan Allen burned a lot of people in cash games last week. But overall, 10 targets, 15 targets, 17 targets. Every competitive game, this guy has gotten a ton of looks. Now, obviously, Mike Williams coming back or potentially he's quote-unquote feeling better right now. So a Mike Williams in there kind of sucking up a few of those targets is not ideal. But you still have the situation on this team where there's no tight end, so it's just 2 guys getting thrown to. I don't think Dontrell Inman is a great threat.
I think he went on IR, Inman, right? I'm not sure,
No.
but I thought
there it is today.
I thought I read something that he's on IR, so he's out of it. Going to the other side, man, Cortland Sutton has just been on a tear. He was one of our favorite wide receivers last year. We knew that he was just having these big beastly catches. Joe Flacco is starting to trust him. What's really great about the passing game in Denver is that it's a narrow tree. They funnel the targets to only 2 receivers, not much to the tight end at all, and certainly not a lot to the third receiver. Is Cortland Sutton still under the radar enough where we should just put him in even cash and tournament lineups?
It's tough to want to play this guy in cash, but John has probably a really good perspective because you were talking about playing the afternoon slate last week. Did you roll some Flacco stacks? Or did you lose to some Flacco stacks?
No, I had
a good game.
I know. No, I had very little Flacco stacks. I did because with the 150 lineups, I'm going to wind up playing. I had a little bit of everybody. I was probably over the market. I don't even recall if I was. I know it was over on Trubisky, which wasn't very helpful. But
not good.
But yeah, I mean, if I'm not playing 150 lineups, I'm not looking at. Even in the afternoon slate here, I'm not looking at Flacco as although, now that I'm looking at it, I do have him projected in that 250 range in yardage. So yeah, with Sutton, that could be a possibility. I'm going to kind of backtrack a little bit. I'm going to have to relook at that.
I mean, his DraftKings price, if you play on DraftKings, is under 5K. So, I mean, we're not talking about a guy we're generally expecting to put up 30 plus, but
the question is who are you saving the money for here in the afternoon?
Well, I don't know I don't know who plays when.
Yeah, it's hard. So I have
to. Yeah.
I'm kind of looking at it quickly, just looking at the teams, and I'm not sure where the hot, maybe Zeke.
I want all the Zeke I can handle this week.
Right.
So if that gets me Zeke, I'm all about it. But realistically, my point was more because you have 2 wide receivers who are actually producing for the Broncos finally in terms of Cortland Sutton and Manny Sanders, just Manny being Manny. And so when that's happening, their quarterback should be benefiting from the situation. And actually, Cortland Sutton, we used to call him mini, what the hell was he? A mini Megatron, right? He was supposed to be like the next Megatron.
And he still could be. I mean, he's only in year 2. Remember,
he didn't look great last year, but he didn't have a quarterback. So now they're they're throwing up bombs to him, and he's catching them. Okay.
Denver's had some bad matchups. This is not one of them this week, as far as being able to throw the ball. So yeah, the potential is there where they look worse than they possibly are because of the teams that they've played. So yeah, it's definitely worth looking at this game for sure.
Yeah, but again, with all that said, I'm not sure that it's where I'm going in cash. But no. I will tell you that in cash this week, and you'll see as you dive into this slate, you're going to want 3 5K or less type wide receivers. So this is the style of player that you're going to be making decisions on in your cash games. this week, because you just are going to want under 5K guys. You're really not going to, if you look at how the running back position shapes up this week, you're going to want 2 or 3 of those guys in your lineup, which means you don't have much salary for anything else.
All right, we're going to bring it home with Green Bay at Dallas. Dallas minus 3.5 didn't have a ton of offensive production last week. I think they get right. I'm looking at this one as a pretty interesting game, even though there's 2 really nice defenses there. Devontae Adams is out. When I get over to you, Geek, I want to talk about the wide receivers on Green Bay a little bit. John, first talk to me about is this looks like one of the more exciting matchups of the week. I like Green Bay with the points here, but I feel like I'm on the sucker side.
No, I kind of like Green Bay here as well with the 3.5. The market's in agreement with us. 73% of the money right now is coming in on Green Bay. The total is pretty split, 50-50, and it's dropped from 48 down to 47. This game actually opened up at 4 and is down to 3.5. So kind of reflecting where the money is coming in at the moment. Green Bay, for me, I think there's a lot being talked about, especially after week 1 when they shut the Bears out and Rodgers came out talking about how, he's got a defense now. I'm not convinced that this is one of the top defenses in the league. And my numbers are kind of showing that right now. So I think there'll be points will be had in this game.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm really hoping. There's so much to like here. You guys talked about Zeke, Aaron Jones with no threat from Jamal Williams. Geek, talk about the running games, but specifically, if Devontae Adams doesn't play, which one of those Green Bay secondary receivers, now being the primary receiver, is it going to be Geronimo Allison? Is it going to be MVS? Are we going to get another Jimmy Graham bonanza with his 9 targets from last week? I mean, start with the passing game. I know I'm getting excited because I love this game is one of the exciting ones. Start with the Green Bay passing game, then go to the running attack.
All right. So, on the Green Bay side, I think the most talented of the trio is Marquez Valdez-Scantling. But that doesn't mean that he's going to be where the targets go. But I do think he's the most talented. He's the guy who has the best shot of going up and ripping the football out of somebody's hand. I'm actually curious to see who they run out at the WR3 position. I know Jake Kumaro had some preseason hype going on.
I think he's a little banged up, though. Yeah, he's banged up.
I don't know how these fucking guys get banged up. They're not even playing. Like, dude.
Football's a hard sport, man. Practice. When I roll out of bed, I tear an ACL.
This guy pulled a groin going out the night before the game and picking up chicks at the local club. That's what happened to Kumaro. But I like Marquez Valdez-Scantling. I like Geronimo Allison here. Everything about I just like this game a lot. It's one of the higher totals on the slate. Yes, the negative is Dallas is the team against whom fantasy points production goes to die. Again, it's another one of those teams that, while they don't seem super elite at any particular actual position, as a whole, they don't allow a lot of fantasy points against. And some of that has to do with their ability to control the football. And there's just a few reasons for it. But it's very interesting to see unleashed Aaron Jones without the burden of Jamal Williams coming in to steal a bunch of those targets in the passing game. That's always a good thing. So I'm going to have some GPP only interest in Aaron Jones here. I don't see this being hey, let me stack up Aaron Rodgers and his backup wide receivers without Devontae Adams. He's just never had a great game without Devontae Adams in the lineup that I've seen in multiple years. So that's not something where I'm going to get excited about it. But I do have an interesting strategy on the flip side, on the Dallas side. It's something I've used in the past, and I want to go back to it for this game. And I'm not saying I'm going to do it, but Dak Prescott, Mark Cooper, Zeke Elliott for all the tutties. You can basically lock down the entire Dallas offense with those 3 players. And if you assume that the Vegas lines are correct here and that the Cowboys will score, 24 or so points, 22, 21, this should get you 3 touchdowns, maybe 3.5. If it goes over that, even better. But all of those should come through Zeke, Dak, and Cooper. I don't think that the Packers have anybody who could stop it. But I'd again, more in tournaments, I'd want to have some pieces from the Packers in that setup as well, because the best case for a tournament winning type of situation would be if the Packers wide receivers and running back are scoring as well. So this is a perfect game stack situation if you want to do that for tournaments. It's one of the higher totals on the slate, and the wide receiver position for the Packers is relatively cheap, so you can afford these guys. And on the flip side, in cash games, I don't hate, and I'm not saying I'm going to do it, but I don't hate just kind of loading up on the Dallas side of this game. And I certainly think Zeke Elliott is going to be one of the consideration, of course, for one of the 3 or 4 super studs on the slate that you're going to try to get in your lineups. Of all of the stud running backs this season, when you talk about McCaffrey, Kamara, Dalvin Cook, and Zeke Elliott is the only one who hasn't had a ceiling game as of yet.
Yeah, that's really good analysis. I liked everything you said there. It opened my eyes to a bunch of possibilities outside of the obvious as well. If you're stuck in a season-long league, what I've been telling people is Dexter Williams. Now, this is not for DFS purposes, but the rookie running back is going to be forced into a role, and Aaron Jones sometimes it does get nicked up. So Dexter Williams can be picked up on almost any waiver wire and played if you're desperate running back this week. John, any closing thoughts on this game before we end the podcast, or is this a game that you're going to be wagering on?
Yes, I will most likely have some action on this game, and I think I mentioned earlier which side that's probably going to be. It looks like it's going to be the Green Bay side. And it should be, I mean, on paper at least, and they never always work this way, but it should be probably one of the more exciting games we get for the weekend. But the Zeke, just when you were mentioning Zeke hasn't hit the ceiling, could have to do with the fact that he was in Mexico for all preseason. So maybe he just starts to hit his stride here in the next, maybe starting with this week.
Yeah, no,
it's been tough matchups. I mean, if you look at it was the Mexico thing. It was Miami. Who the hell wants to run Zeke out there against Miami? Like, well, let's not hurt our guy. And then it was the Saints. It's just a tough matchup. The Saints, you can't run on them. They're like the Eagles. So, yeah, let's maybe we'll get a ceiling game.
All right, boys, that's a wrap. Great job again. This was a lot of fun. The Geeks Vegas line was brought to you by OverlayDFS.com. We're going to wrap it up here. I just want to remind anyone who here is watching that is a season-long basketball freak. We had just started a new channel in the Slack chat, season-long basketball. We're getting a league going. So check us out in the season-long NBA and amongst all the other channels. Geek, what else do you want to promote real quick?
No, we've got a couple of things to share and remind you. Now, if you enjoy John's breakdowns here, Statsational, I know I do, go to dfsarmy.com/bookie-pricing, or just on the dfsarmy.com website, click on the Beat the Bookie logo in the menu bar, go over to Beat the Bookie. He's sharing his bets, his picks every single week, all of his tools, everything as part of DFS Army Beat the Bookie service. So an awesome deal. And if you're a DFS Army or already VIP subscriber, there's a discount. You can ask about that within our team forums. And as far as anybody listening here who is into DFS, go to dfsarmy.com, get signed up as a VIP member, use promo code GEEK, you get 20% off. We cover every sport. Right now we're getting into preseason basketball. We've got hockey starting up tonight. We crush all of these sports: college football, college basketball, NFL, of course.
And I just want to jump in. You said something about John. He's not just putting these picks up. He has stake in the game. He's wagering his own livelihood on these games. So it's not like he's just putting these up there and touting and selling picks. He's not doing anything like that. He's actually using his algorithms, his formulas. I know you're too humble to say this, John. That's why I'm saying it for you.
I'm not humble at all.
Okay. Well,
no, I am. But...
Yeah, I know you are. And he's what I'm saying is he's actually taking his algorithm and then applying his own livelihood to it. So that's how you know when someone's for real, when they're betting their own money.
These are pro gamblers who make their living betting these games. And this is very, very important. We don't fuck around, okay? If you're not into we've got you covered. DFS is hard, I get it. It's a passion for us. If you're not into that, it's too hard. Jump over to sports betting. That shit's not that hard. You just pick a side, and you're probably going to be right 50% of the time. And if you got some sharp guys helping you out and some sharp tools, hopefully you can be right 55% of the time and make a lot of money. On the DFS side, we've got you covered as well. Every sport, every site, dfsarmy.com. This is what we do every single week. So get in there. We want to help you out. When you're in, you're family. When you're out, you're the enemy.
Ooh, it's like the Olive Garden. When you're here, you're family.
That's right.
You know, one thing though, you know, you talk about And I give out my games, whatever the model says, and some analysis. But what you're getting more, and I think is more important, is exactly how you're supposed to be betting, the psychology behind it, your bankroll management, your money it's almost more important than actually picking the games correctly, because eventually you could get yourself to being a smart bettor. I had a professor in college, and he said, what's the number one thing every business, the most important thing for any business? And everyone said, make a profit. It's not make a profit. It's to stay in business. And when you have poor bank management or bankroll management and risk management skills, or none at all, and you have no game plan, you're going to go out of business really quick in sports betting or DFS. So once you're out of business, you can't make any money. And staying in the game is how you learn. So understanding that is hugely important. So not just giving out games. I'm trying to educate these guys and help everyone I can. So come on over, subscribe, and say hi to me over in the Slack room.
Hell yeah, that couldn't be more spot on. And again, something we do as well in DFS Army on the DFS side is we really focus on bankroll management, how to attack various types of games, the theory behind why we're putting lineups together. And there's a reason why, even though 2 weeks ago, for example, Bobby Klinkert wins $1 million using 8 of 9 players on the Geeks pick sheet, I didn't win $1 million. And that's the beauty of, explaining, doing things the right way, putting the lineup together the right way. And it could happen. There's a technique to this, and it's hard to hit, but if you're using the proper technique, the game stacking, the team stacking, all of that, secondary stacking, all of those things, and making a lineup that's smart, that's when you have a chance to hit. And that's a lot of what we're talking about in DFS Army all the time.
And we'll have Bobby, the new millionaire, Bobby Wow, on the Flex Network podcast. I'll be sending out a link. He's coming on Friday night. Yep, nice. He agreed. He's gonna promote DFS Army on the Flex Network pod. We're certainly excited to have him there. But great, you guys said it all. We appreciate it. What a great pleasure talking to you both. John, anything else to promote before we go? Where can they find you on Twitter?
That's Statsational. That's about it for me.
Okay, Geek, where can they find you on Twitter?
You know me, F Football Geek on Twitter.
Okay, and for me, it's at Alan Seslowski. Until next week when we talk again, boys, au revoir.
All right. Thanks.
Take care, guys.